All right, we're now going to look at what happens to our domestic market, which could be competitive market, when it now opens its borders to international trade. And that's kind of the purpose of Chapter 9. And so one thing we learned from the 10 principles of economics is that trade can make everyone better off. And now we want to identify why that is the case. So in Chapter 3, we did a little bit of that with comparative advantage and PPF. Now we want to look at, in a sense, surplus as a measure of being better off. So here we have our market. We have our quantity demand equals quantity supplied. And now, normally we call it P star, but here I'm going to call it PD. So the price, the domestic price. And the question we want to ask ourselves and be able to answer is what happens when the world price is above the domestic price? And so I'm just going to arbitrarily draw a line right here, and we're going to call this price of the world. Okay, and so now there's free trade. Anyone can trade in the country. So the question we want to ask is, how is that going to affect our consumers and our producers? Well, let's think of our consumers. The consumers can buy domestically or they can buy international. If they buy from a domestic firm, they'll pay the price PD. That seems pretty good. If they buy international, they pay a higher price, PW, or price of the world. So consumers are really going to want to purchase domestically. But that's only half the equation. The other half of the equation is what will producers want to do? Well, producers can sell domestically at this price, PD, or at no additional cost to them, they can sell on the world market at PW. So as a result, the producers are going to decide that this area right here, or this point right here, is how much they're going to supply. Because now these producers along this part of the supply curve would not produce domestically because the price was too low and their costs were above the price. But now as they can enter the market, we actually see a huge increase in the quantity being supplied or produced. Well, if that's the case, if that's how much they're producing international, or they're going to sell at the world price, they have no incentive to sell domestically at any price below the world price because they could just go sell it to a different country at that price. So as a result, consumers are not going to be able to buy it for the domestic price, and they're only going to be able to buy it at the world price. And so the quantity demanded is going to be at this point here. And so we're going to see the quantity consumed domestically go from Q star, and that's going to drop to QD. The amount being produced goes from Q star and increases to QS. Now, normally we call this, when quantity supplied is greater than quantity demand, we call that a surplus. But now, because we're in a domestic market, there is no place for those goods to go. Now there is. And so as a result, when quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded, the country becomes a net exporter. That means they'll sell QD to domestic individuals, and then they'll export the rest. So this distance here is what we call exports. And that's the amount being exported to other countries. So to find the amount of exports, so exports equals QS minus QD. And that's what happens when world price is above domestic price. Now, real quickly, let's just go ahead and identify the areas of surplus. So consumers were getting this large triangle right here before, but now they're not because the price they're facing increases. So this triangle right here is our consumer surplus. Now producers, before we're getting this triangle right here, but now the price goes up, and not only are they getting up to this point, but it comes all the way out here. And so this very large triangle now is producer surplus. And notice now we have this area right here, this triangle, which wasn't in the original triangle of total surplus. This is what we call the gains from trade. In this case, all the gains from trade are being captured by the producer because the world price is above domestic price. So as we introduce international trade, what we find out here is that as a country, their total surplus, or rather their total surplus increases. Because of gain from trade, it indeed makes everyone better off.